Liam Lawson has been hugely impressive during his short Formula 1 debut, and Red Bull are going to get another look at him. We'll see the Kiwi back on track in Qatar this weekend as he looks to add to his points tally and potentially move ahead of permanent AlphaTauri team driver Yuki Tsunoda. Has he done enough to earn a permanent place on the F1 grid next season though? Can he do anything in Qatar to convince Red Bull he deserves more than a seat in the simulator next season? Let's check it out. AlphaTauri have confirmed that Daniel Ricciardo is out of the Qatar Grand Prix and Liam Lawson is in. He has occupied the seat alongside Yuki Tsunoda since Daniel Ricciardo broke his hand during practice for the Dutch Grand Prix in August. In the 4 Grand Prix Lawson has contested so far, he has scored 2 points, reached Q3 and never finished lower than 13th. His average finishing position of 11th is incredibly impressive when you consider that he's in the worst car on the grid. As a point of reference, Yuki Tsunoda has only managed an average finishing position of 12.9. Nick De Vries and Daniel Ricciardo's numbers are both worse than that as well. Ricciardo had only been in the AlphaTauri AT04 for 2 weekends before his injury, having replaced the underperforming Nick De Vries. His best finish until that point was 13th. To see if he was ready for a return in Qatar in terms of strength in his hands, Ricciardo recently did a simulator session at AlphaTauri's Faenza headquarters. Following that, it was determined that he would not be back in the cockpit this weekend, and he now has an extra 2 weeks to rest his hand before the United States Grand Prix. You can see the scale of the operation he had from his Instagram pictures, and we hope he can be back in time for the United States Grand Prix. Liam Lawson will be required back in Suzuka for the final 2 rounds of the 2023 Super Formula Championship. In theory, he could race in the States the weekend before, but I'm sure that Team Mugen and him would prefer to have him back in Japan to prepare for the race. Formula 1 rules dictate that each team can only field 4 drivers per season. So if Daniel Ricciardo is still injured and Liam Lawson has to go back to Japan, that leaves just Nick De Vries as an option to partner Yuki Tsunoda. He might be free to come back for a race, but after sacking him mid-season, I would imagine he would charge a pretty big fee for his services. There is plenty of time for Daniel to recover by then though, and according to Chris Medland, Ricciardo is almost ready for a return. Hearing it'll be one more weekend of Liam Lawson at AlphaTauri in Qatar. Sim session went well for Daniel Ricciardo, but not yet at 100%, and trying FP1 and finding it's a bit too soon would have really hurt Lawson on a sprint weekend. It's extremely rare for a reserve driver to get such an extended run on the F1 grid, and Lawson has taken the opportunity with both hands. The 21-year-old Kiwi has beaten AlphaTauri teammate Yuki Tsunoda in every race he's been in, and managed to score World Championship points by finishing 9th at the Japanese Grand Prix. If Lawson outscores Yuki Tsunoda this weekend, even if it is just 1 point to 0, he will move above him in the Drivers' Championship. If points are even between 2 drivers in the championship, then the driver with the highest finishing place outranks the other. Yuki has only managed a 10th place finish this season, whereas Lawson managed 9th in Singapore. But despite Lawson's strong performance, AlphaTauri opted to stick with Ricciardo and Japanese youngster Tsunoda for a 4th season as their full-time drivers for 2024. The announcement has left Lawson out in the F1 wilderness, as Red Bull team principal Christian Horner insisted the talented youngster will have plenty to do as Red Bull and AlphaTauri's reserve driver. Horner has also moved to shut down speculation Lawson could be poached by Williams, going as far as saying that he wouldn't leave the team on a 1-year loan either. Considering Liam's impressive performance, it is a surprise that Red Bull haven't tried to get him in a seat. They could have at least waited a little longer before confirming that Ricciardo would take a permanent seat at AlphaTauri in 2024. If they'd shown a little more patience, then they would have had the option to look at Lawson and make a more informed decision between the two. By jumping the gun on that decision, they limited their options and potentially made the wrong one. That's a point of view that is spreading through the sport as well. Johnny Herbert recently said in an article for Motorsport magazine that he thought AlphaTauri made the wrong decision going with Ricciardo. On first sight, I'm impressed with what I've seen from Lawson. Why? Because in a very short space of time, he's been able to adjust to the bubble of Formula 1. What I like is that ability to jump in and do the job straight away. It's actually a rare thing when someone gets a hold of a car and does what we actually expect of them. Lawson has shown speed when there's pressure because he's been racing to prove he's worthy of keeping the drive. In the cutthroat world of Formula 1, where we talk about drivers needing time to make an impression on the sport and start performing, Liam Lawson has proven that the best drivers can adapt instantly. Think about some of the best drivers of recent times. Lewis Hamilton finished 2nd in his first F1 season. Max Verstappen was a regular point scorer before winning his first race in a Red Bull. They didn't need time to adjust. To win in Formula 1, you have to be the absolute best of the best, and that requires an innate talent that not all drivers have. Mick Schumacher, Nicholas Latifi, Nick De Vries, Logan Sargent. These are great drivers, otherwise they wouldn't be in Formula 1. None of them impressed enough to make anyone think that they had what it takes to actually win in Formula 1. I'm not saying Liam Lawson has done enough to do that, but he has made an instant impact, and that is something that very few people can do. Herbert continued by saying, "So I don't agree with the decision of AlphaTauri to bring Daniel Ricciardo back for next year. Is he the future? No, Liam is the future. I understand that Daniel didn't get a proper go at it before breaking his wrist at Zandvoort, but in the time he had on his return, there was no wow factor. I'd say there has been with Liam. He has something that looks pretty special. I think it should have been a Lawson-Tsunoda lineup at AlphaTauri next year. After all, it's a junior team that exists to bring on young talent. Next season is a turning point for AlphaTauri. Though Herbert says they are a junior team for talent development, that could be changing next year. The team, who will have a new title sponsor, want to be more competitive, and part of that will be a tightening of the relationship with Red Bull. AlphaTauri's new car for the 2024 F1 season will be significantly different to the AT04, as they have been told to use more parts from senior team Red Bull. If you're going to be starting a new journey with a new, more competitive outlook, wouldn't you want to have drivers who are going to be there for the ride? Not a driver who wants out of the team already in Daniel Ricciardo, and one who could be moving to Aston Martin in the very near future courtesy of their links to Honda, that being Yuki Tsunoda. While Red Bull have dominated the 2023 World Championship, winning all bar one of the 16 races so far, the junior squad languishes at the bottom of the championship table with just 5 points. AlphaTauri is at risk of ending the year with their worst championship result during Red Bull's 18-year ownership of the team. The lowest championship finish in that time was 10th place with 8 points in 2009 when they were known as Toro Rosso. The two teams have used the power units, now known as Honda RBPT, since 2019. They also share some other parts. But after AlphaTauri diverged from the world champion's design in some areas this year, Red Bull Motorsport consultant Helmut Marko said its future approach should be based on Red Bull Racing as far as the regulations allow. AlphaTauri Technical Director Jody Eggington confirmed the team will follow Red Bull's design lead more closely with its new design for 2024. Since we started this synergy in 2019, the parts we've selected off the menu have been different, and for next year it'll be slightly different again more or less, he explained. Relative to this year, a bit more. Relative to a couple of the previous years, probably about the same. At the end of the day, there's a notional value consideration for customer teams when you start purchasing parts from supplying teams. You've got to keep an eye on the budget. But we'll maximize what's available to us as we try to do as much as we can. Whoever AlphaTauri's new title sponsor is, there's talks of it being Adidas instead of Hugo Boss now, but it doesn't really matter which it is. Whichever brand gets the naming rights, they will want the car they are spending millions to name to be competitive. Not so far back, it barely features in the TV coverage. At the moment, Liam Lawson is showing he is the most competitive driver AlphaTauri have available. Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda might have been confirmed as their drivers for next season, but Liam Lawson is making that look like a mistake at the moment. Do you think Liam will take the opportunity to pass Tsunoda in the Drivers' Championship in Qatar? And did AlphaTauri make a mistake signing Daniel Ricciardo for 2024? Should they have waited to see what Lawson could do? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.